to this. Hello, my name is Alex S. Johnson, and I run Nocturnicorn Books, and I host this podcast on YouTube. It's called The Small Bear Show. Um, Often we have Leah Celeste Williams, aka Pickles, on board, and we do the Small Bear and Pickles show. We even have a little dorky little theme song. Doot 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 doot. Small Bear and Pickles show. And tomorrow we will be featuring Mimi Pond, the Eisner and Penn Award winning a graphic novelist who's also well known for having scripted the first episode of The Simpsons and having also worked with Pee Wee Herman and on designing women, and has had work in The Village Voice, The New Yorker, 17 magazine, and places like that. So she's highly regarded. She's considered one of the top graphic novelists, working today. And uh, let's see a little bit about what I do because I could go on and on. I run Nocturnicorn Books, like I said. It's a also has a division of multimedia division. We're hoping to get into film. I and Lee Bales, who's one of my collaborators, is yeah, we're working on some film projects. And I'll just, rather than just talk, I'm just going to give you a concrete example of the kind of work that we do and the kind of people that we're involved in and with. And this is our flagship anthology series. It's called The Junk Merchants. It's a literary tribute to, the author, Naked Lunch, William S. Burroughs, one of the most influential, I would say, um, authors and artists and poets and he also innovated. Well, that was Hunter S. Thompson. Okay, he innovated shotgun painting. William S. Burroughs, and this the series was endorsed by not only Patti Smith and by Graham Masterton. Patti Smith said the Junk Merchant series is a fascinating project. Okay, and Graham Masterton wrote the foreword. He said, a fine tribute to the Burroughs legacy. The bill, as in Bill Burroughs, has been paid in full. And Graham Masterton, Horror Writers Association Lifetime Achievement Award winning author of Rules of Duel with William S. Burroughs. He also wrote a book called The Manitou, which was made into a movie with Tony Curtis. And just a few. This is who we have on the cover. Ellen Mabey is an award-winning poet, best known for having published *The Cowardice of Amnesia*, was published by Henry Rollins under 21361 publications. It was edited by Exene Cervenka of X and the Knitters and Antichrist, and it was with cover photography by Viggo Mortensen, who was married to Exene, and he's well known for obviously The Lord of the Rings, right? And Henry Rollins is just one of the people who's in love with Ellen Mabey, and I love her dearly. She's one of my closest friends, and she loves me. And it's like we're dating, but not. You know what I mean? Because and I'm her favorite poet. So I'm the favorite poet of somebody who's who is beloved of people like Grail Marcus, Jackson Brown, and Henry Rollins. Okay, so there's I mean you can't beat that for I do have my haters, but they cannot beat that, right? They're not best friends with Ellen Mabey. Okay. And another contributor, I need to speed this shit up because I could go on all day. David J. Haskins of contributed an original poem called El Hombre Invisible, and he's best known for a little number called Bela Lugosi's Dead. Undead, 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 and which was featured in The Hunger, famously. Anna Taborska is an award-winning a filmmaker. She's also won the Bram Stoker Award, been nominated 5 times for the Bram Stoker Award. She contributed a piece, and we have an original auto fiction by a woman named Carrie Lee Crum, who's best known for her work with a band called the Runaways, which is probably next to Bauhaus, one of the most influential bands in musical history. So that's original piece. Lee Bales is my partner in crime. We're making films together. Jarbo is very well known as a Gothic industrial pioneer, with particularly her work with Swans, but also having collaborated with David J. and Blix. I can never pronounce his last name. Um, uh, and Neurosis. She's collaborated with a lot of really amazing names. The guy from Godflesh, Justin Broderick. She collaborated with Justin Broderick. And then I'll just sort of speed things up. Got Ethan Maroulis, best known for like working with Spawn Ranch, Black Tape for a Blue Girl, and he contributed some originals, and as well as allowing us to publish the lyrics to Locusts, which was performed by Spawn Ranch. Then we have a piece by literal William S. Burroughs. And then I'll sort of speed things up. Forward by Graham Masterton, an introduction by Poppy Z. Bright, Billy Martin, who is a very, very famous gay transgender man, who's you know, longtime resident of New Orleans, and he was also disabled. And I feel for the man. He's a very beautiful man. I've known him for about 30 years, and so yeah. So introduction by Poppy and forward by Graham Masterton. We've got a William S. Burroughs interview by V. Vale of Research Publications. So that brings us up to our guests, our special guest today. I think I'll start with Daniel G. Snethen. Daniel G. Snethen is a scientist, an educator, a tracker of habitats of creatures such as the burying beetle, and or also known as the corpse beetle. He's a fascinating man. He keeps a pet. He's had more than one pet rattlesnake, and we did a couple of shows. He's also has a wonderful voice. I hope maybe you could do maybe an a cappella, Daniel. He and I and Juliet Cook of Blood Pudding Press have all collaborated on poems. And Daniel has a wonderful kind of surreal sensibility. He's really also very, very ecologically oriented uh, poet and short story writer. And so, we're honored to have him back again. And so let's see. Then we have I got this all, the wonders of technology, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do this being disabled, as I am. And speaking of disability, as we were, disability, hey. Um, Laura Brody is from Fairbanks, Alaska, and if I get any of this wrong, just please tell me. Is an artist, curator, and educator residing in Los Angeles County. She began her professional career as a costume designer and maker, working in film, television, opera, dance, and cosplay. Brody studied French literature at Reed College, which is interesting. So did I. I mean, not at Reed.
Not actually.
Oh,
No,
oh, you
I'm
did?
not. Yeah, I think this might be somebody.
Oh,
There, there, there are actually other leather Brodies.
oh, okay. So none of this is accurate.
Well,
Okay.
no, most of it was up until studying French literature at Reed
Oh,
College.
okay. I think maybe they confused that with me, and then my uncle went to Reed. So I apologize.
No worries.
Are you a member of a costume designers guild?
I'm actually the Most Pictures Costumers Union, local 705.
That is accurate. Okay, 705, that's what I have here on the screen. Brody is, I think I'm on safe ground here. Brody is the founder and curator of Opulent,
That's
Opulent Mobility, which is a great
that's
name, right? Opulent
yes,
Mobility. I love that. I love the sense of, and it's something that I very much advocate for as a disability rights advocate, dignity. Not just dignity, but flair, class, and a little bit of sexiness, Like we are, right? We are sexual beings. We're not just like gimps, unless we want to be. And we're sorry, and we're kind of, we're kind of awesome. I mean, disabled people are some of my best friends, they rock so hard. So she's Opulent Mobility is a series of art exhibits that aim to reimagine disability as opulent and powerful, right? Her
correct.
inspiration for opulent mobility came after her former partner had a stroke, leading her to notice the cold and clinical designs of adaptive devices and promoting her to invite others to reimagine disability through art. Her artwork transforms mobility scooters, wheelchairs, and walkers into sculptures, which is fucking amazing. And she also creates portraits and wearable art from scrap fabrics. Um, Back when I was an undergraduate at UC Davis, I interviewed this woman who put together the show of wearable art. So I remember that the wearable art thing, right? And these artworks are designed to spark conversations about disability, social justice, sustainability, and waste, which are all, very important issues to me. A small bear. Brody's work has been exhibited at various venues, including ACE 121 Gallery, ArtShare LA, Brea Gallery, and the World of Wearable Art. He is also the host of Genius Tea Time, a series of talks exploring fascinating individuals. I believe I am a fascinating individual. I would love to be on your show. Um, uh,
Let's talk about that. All
okay,
right.
cool. Diana Olney is a Seattle, excuse me, that came out like a strangled cat there. Is a Seattle-based author, poet, and comic series creator known for her focus on dark and horror fiction. She explores the dark paths between nightmares and dreams. That sounds pretty goddamn dark, lady. In her writing, her work includes genre-bending fiction, poetry, and nonfiction articles. Only stories have appeared in collections such as These Lingering Shadows, ooh, The Monsters Next Door, Dark Horses Magazine, issue 20, and Shallow Waters, volume 9. Her upcoming, and this may be old information, I would just say
It is.
anthology contributions include To Hell and Back and Shadow Lab, volume 2, with her coming of age story Insatiable featured in the latter. Olney is the creator and writer of Siren Song, an original horror comic series illustrated by an all-female team. Yay, all-female team, which she describes as being in the horror comedy wheelhouse. Nice. Additionally, she writes articles about the dark side of fashion for Memento Mori Inc., that is Crystal Lake Entertainment, that's Lisa Vasquez horror magazine, where she serves as a dark fashion columnist. Nice. Her influences include authors such as Gwendolyn Kist, Elizabeth Hand, Cassandra Caw, and actually, I don't know most of these, so maybe you could fill me in.
And
Jack
Michael
Jack Skillingstead, and which sounds like like a palindrome for Jack Killington,
Mhm.
and Richard Kadri, as well as her Black Cats, Dolce and Gabbana. Only currently working on two novellas and a collection of short stories. This is probably old information. So welcome, 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 everybody. Diana, Laura Brody, and Daniel D. Snethen, or as he's, mon monolithically known now. It's just Snethen. That's so badass, man. Snethen is in the house. I mean, so um let's start with you, Diana. So now we got to know each other about like our acquaintance is really about a week old. And so just remind me of how we kind of connected at first. I know it was through the call for submissions that I and Michael H. Hansen put out for the Clive Barker tribute anthology, and which I've sort of taken over because I'm kind of a control freak and I need to do it. and so he's going to be a contributor. So, so what was it that like drew you to want to contribute to the Le Fantastique, a literary tribute to Clive Barker?
Well, Clive Barker, right?
Well, yeah, right.
I mean, I don't think I've met a single dark soul working or writing in the horror realm, be it,
Yeah,
words or film or etc., who
yeah,
doesn't adore Barker. But
right, yeah,
yeah, I try to keep keep myself relatively in the know of what open calls are happening.
sure,
Most of my, if I'm not promoting a new release, most of my Facebook time is checking those groups to see
right,
what's
yeah,
happening. The worst feeling ever is having missed an amazing open call and not even
exactly, yeah,
getting a shot to throw something in the ring. And
exactly,
Clive Barker themed anthology, I can hang with that. Um,
yeah,
and I babbled to one of those guys you mentioned, Jack Skillingstead. He is another Seattle author,
yeah,
um, dwelling here in the shadows.
nice,
We are shadow pals, and he's kind of a mentor of mine. And
cool.
um, uh, yeah, we were bouncing ideas of what I should do the second I heard about it. And so then I uh, put some dark ink in the ring, and then you and I connected very
Yeah,
serendipitously,
yeah.
and here we are.
I that's beautiful. That's wonderful. Yeah, mentorship is so important and amazing. I just mentioned a couple of people who really I who helped me. There's been so many, but I will just mention. There's so many. Okay, I'll just mention two. Okay, I'll just the from the short list, and then I'll yeah. So one, his name is John Shirley. Okay, John Shirley is best known as Bram Stoker
Right?
award-winning author, the co-creator of Cyberpunk, and the screenwriter with David J. Scow of The Crow, as well as being a songwriter, a frequent songwriter for Loyster Cult. And more than a year ago, in 2012, I published a collection of dark poetry as well and surreal experimental work and a few flash fictions called The Death Jazz. And I was invited to read by Richard Modiano from Beyond Baroque, who's then the executive director of Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center in Venice Beach. And actually, I could consider him a mentor as well. He's been extraordinarily kind. Ellen Mabey was the woman who I had also contacted around that time because I was living in LA and I was working for Cal State Dominguez Hills. And one of my co-instructors told me that there was this amazing woman who was, you know, worked out of Beyond Baroque, and her name was Ellen Mabey, and she's very shy, she said, and she giggles a lot, right? So I was extremely intrigued, like, who is this person, right? Who is this giggling goddess, as S.A. Griffin calls her? And so I contacted her via Facebook, and she was extremely accessible. And the first thing she said is like she wanted to know who I was and what I did. And I said, "Well, I'm a poet." And she says, "Well, what are you working on?" Because she doesn't. She actually likes that I make her sound like Kermit. She said, "I love Kermit." So I'm like, "Okay, Ellen. Well, I am. Thank you for asking because you're a legend. I mean, you've been published by Rollins, right?" So, and she's, yeah, yeah, Henry Rollins. And so I was like, so what do you recommend of your work? And she said, dancing barefoot in the Glassblowers Museum. So I bought that. I fell in love with her work, and she she and Richard invited me to read at Beyond Baroque, which is where, X got their start, John Doe, Exene Cervenka met. Anyway, long story short, around that time, I also reached out to one of my favorite authors and certainly the man who wrote The Crow, John Shirley, who was a Facebook friend at the time, and I asked him if he would be willing to read my collection, the Death Jazz, and he did, and he gave it a rave review. He said it basically invented a new kind of genre. And so over the years, Ellen and John have been such vital, played such a vital role in encouraging me. The last time that Shirley reviewed my work, it was last year when I put out The Flowers of Doom, which was inspired by Baudelaire. And he wrote, um, the Flowers of Doom proves once again that Alex S. Johnson is the Baudelaire of our time, the poet of the underground. And I'm like, holy shit, So you can't, I looked at that email over and over, and it's like, this is John Shirley. Yeah, this is real. I mean, it's like not a hallucination. And so I really believe in mentorship. I believe in collaboration. And I think that this is potentially a beautiful community. There's a lot of discrimination against people because of disability. And this is one of the things that I've discovered. And I think I would love to speak with Laura about this because I just discovered in my own case when I was trying to get some help from the medical community. And this is actually how I met Carrie Lee Crone because I was, basically misdiagnosed, deliberately misdiagnosed by Kaiser Permanente doctors, and I was herded towards psychiatry, you know, and if I hadn't like reached out to people on X, like well, I was not on ecstasy, but on X, on whatever it was called, Twitter at the time, right? David Tuller, who's the director of public health at UC Berkeley, and also who put me in touch with Dr. David Petrino, who runs the Petrino Lab at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Queens, New York, right? And he has this whole mobility lab. He creates these these machines that kind of walk you, and which is absolutely fascinating, Laura. And I think that you and he would have a lot in common. I can connect you, via email. So you and he, and as well as my dad, Stephen M. Johnson, who also does similar things, but more a whimsical vein. So we'll come back to you, Diana. And so I wanted to ask Laura. So tell me more about how you got started with disability rights advocacy and designing these sort of what I mean, there's sort of fascinating hybrids, right? Because it's mobility devices, but it's also sculptures. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I'd started because a former partner had a stroke. Actually, somebody who is a big collector of burros
Wow.
and bookseller of that.
Oh my
But
God.
earlier on in his life, going through physical therapy with him, I've met an 85-year-old man and a 4-year-old girl who are doing the exact same therapy for the exact same reason.
Wow.
So it doesn't take much to realize that can happen to anyone at any time.
Yeah.
But the equipment just struck me with how almost insultingly ugly it looked.
Right.
And through the years, I've been working with making my own designs, realizing that I'm not, maybe not cut out for medical licensing, but I'm very definitely cut out for curating and art and the conversation of it, because that's really the most interesting part of it to me. And sort of through the path, discovering my own chronic health issues and working through that. But yeah, the issue of misdiagnosis and gaslighting, medical gaslighting, is a very real issue, and any of us with uteruses, much more so. That happens pretty chronically and terribly. On the, oh no, that's really all in your head. What you really need is an antidepressant. But it's shockingly common. I'm
Shocking.
sorry that that has happened to you. It certainly happened to me. For a lot of people I know, it's like easy 10 years before you get a proper diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is just stop me before I gallop away because there's so much to unpack. This is how I met, like, in a way, this is in a very paradoxical way, my disability, my brain injury and ongoing neurodegenerative disease condition, which is still undiagnosed because Kaiser And we can't really afford a private doctor or anything like that. But this is how I met, a couple of individuals. One of them is Carrie Lee Crum. And I was involved with this. Actually, I was under a pseudonym. Under John Stevenson, and I was participating in these groups on Facebook and Reddit called like things like "I hate Kaiser Permanente," yada yada. So I was kind of doing these. I started doing. I've been a journalist for about you know 3 decades. I've worked for Metal Hammer magazine. I worked for, Experience Hendrix and Blue Blood and Metal Maniacs. I was a staff writer for Zero Tolerance magazine in the UK, and I was in on the ground floor of, actually in on the ground floor of Zero Tolerance. I worked with Blue Blood, and anyway, so when I started to develop this disease, and then I was severely gaslighted, deliberately misdiagnosed by this whole literal cabal of like a neurologist, the head of neurology at Sacramento, Kaiser, the head of radiology, and their neuropsychologist, who I got fired. Yay, me, and a neuropsychiatrist. They all kind of literally colluded. It sounds like paranoia, but they literally colluded to deliberately misdiagnose me. They filed false, you know, um, whatever they fabricated their notes, they fabricated tests. They actually, the neuropsychologist, Dr. Kimberly Lanny, actually, um, she fabricated whole meetings with me that never took place, in which she misdiagnosed me without having met me during a 2 year period of time when I wasn't even participating in the Kaiser. So she created and fabricated, and she went and she not only that, but she doubled down on the punishment, trying to drive me towards psychiatry because big pharma. And when I pushed back, she declared me a dangerous and violent individual and reported me to the security team. And so this created a whole big thing. But I fought back. I'm a very strong person. It's very strong-willed and always have been. And I said, no, man, I'm not. She declared that I had, you know, um, uh, dependent personality disorder because I had my father with me, who's also disabled and has also been disabled by Kaiser. Anyway, long story short, this was how I got in touch with Carrie Lee Crum. Carrie Lee Crum sent me a Facebook, friend request one day. I looked at this name and I wrote back. I said, "I'm your biggest fan," and she wrote, "You know, I am, I am," and she wrote literally, "You're my hero," and it's like, what? It's like, Carrie Lee Crum, wow, I'm your hero, and she said, "Yeah, because you fought Kaiser. You're a hero. You're a hero to a lot of us, And I was like, wow, I love you. You know, I mean, damn, with Carrie Lee Crum, she wrote California Paradise. She wrote that song that was in the Runaways movie and Secrets and Waiting for the Night. And so that's how we became friends. And then I met, this is also when I decided to do a little deep dive on this woman, Kimberly Lanny, the woman I got fired from Kaiser, which never happens. Never a patient-led, you know, victory over a gaslighter, misdiagnoser, and fraud. And I finally, with the help of Dr. David Petrino, at Petrino Labs at Mount Sinai in Queens, New York, a person named Lyric Rivera, aka Neurodivergent Rebel, is a world famous, just basically the face of neurodivergency and very, very well known, non-binary transgender, person who I've also had on the show, and Dr. And Henny uh, Henny Cooperstein. So we had all these people came together, and I started to doing a deep dive into this woman, uh, Dr. Dr. Kimberly Lanny, who was the one who misdiagnosed me in the first place. I discovered that she acquired her doctorate in clinical psychology fraudulently by not only that, she literally tortured autistic children to the and under a NIH grant at UC Davis Mind Institute to the tune of $2 million. That's how she got her grant, grant funding by doing these experiments where she strapped down these kids who were autistic children and subjected them to fake MRI noises, which are the like a 200, like 110 decibels, which is like a rock concert or, a landing strip in an airport, right? And nobody noticed this, that her research was not only was obtained fraudulently, but she tortured autistic children and it even says mild restraint. What the actual fuck, right? Mild restraint. I'm like, oh hell no. So I did this vigorous, I mean rigorous research. Went into everything, and I got, I was endorsed by Lyric Rivera, who then became a friend of mine and endorsed my Substack, right? And that's how I got in touch with them, and I got in touch with other transgender individuals like Lasara Firefox Allen, who wrote the forthcoming book, Genderqueer Menopause, which I've also, blurbed. It's a long story short, but I think my point is, if I have one, is that you know disability. Well, also there's Tom Sullivan, who got me on board with editing his book, um, Seeing Lessons: 14 Life Secrets I've Learned Along the Way. He was a two-time Emmy award-winning actor, musician, and he sang at the Super Bowl. He's been on Oprah. He's Tom Sullivan. He wrote If You Could See What I Hear, right? I edited his book. He asked me to edit his book, and he kind of got me started, and he collaborated with, Betty White, right? Which was his best friend. And they had a companion animal that they shared together. So really have to thank you, Tom Sullivan, as well. Okay. Fucking rock, man. He's a Republican too, so he's probably anyway, I love him. I love him a lot. Okay. And so there's unexpected benefits of being disabled when you get to hang out with people like, like Laura Brody, and you get to meet people like Lyric Rivera, and be the favorite poet of Ellen Maybe, right? And work with Billy Martin, Poppy Z. Brite, and just actual friends who are some of the most amazing creative forces working today. And I think that's the sort of a question, maybe if I can turn that into a question. What do you think it is about disability when it's empowered, when, for example, neurodivergent people are empowered, or people with brain injuries and strokes are empowered? What do you think happens, Laura, to their whole outlook?
Well, I think that that's the thing that we all need, first off, as
Right.
humans. It's
Yeah.
one of the only ways that we can shine
Yeah.
as people, is to be acknowledged for who we are and for the gloriousness that we can give, right?
Yeah.
For exactly as we are. But because, especially in a society which is frankly devoted to eugenics,
Thank you.
right? We have a culture that would be just as happy seeing anybody who doesn't fit up to some ideal or another as gone. They just don't want them around. We're seeing that really blatantly right now. But when you can be, when you have the culture that allows and not just allows, celebrates who you really are,
Hmm.
people get to shine.
Yeah.
And people get to use their genuine gifts to make life fabulous and to be who they are.
Yeah. So it almost occurs to me as that that just like there's five stages of grief, there's five stages of ungrief, like, so could you maybe talk about that? So like the first stage, and for me, was realizing that looking back at my career and realizing it took the shock of being so severely misdiagnosed that my pushback, caused me to, be labeled dangerous and violent. You know, this woman, even fabricated reports that I'd shown up and was harassing Kaiser doctors. You know, literally that thought I had that I was a security threat. And so, and she pursued me, she hounded me, she literally stalked me on social media. This woman is incredibly out of control, and I got her fired. This never happens, but I think it was sort of like the shock of looking at this diagnosis, dependent personality disorder, which is such a vile, dehumanizing way to label somebody. And I was like recognizing, and I realized I am the exact fucking opposite of this. I am extremely strong, and I'd always have been. And I think, hey, I've worked with Betty White. You know, I've been praised by, people like John Shirley. I wrote a book with Pat Cadigan, who won the Hugo. Who's also worked with William Gibson. I was like, I worked with Pat Cadigan. I wrote a canonical like Friday the 13th spin-off novel with Pat Cadigan. And so I realized, man, and I've been doing Nocturnicorn books for 10 years. I had original material, original short stories from, people like Lucy Taylor, who won the Bram Stoker Award, Sifra Giron. I, one of I've published, Ramsey Campbell. I've published, practically everybody except Stephen King and Clive Barker, and we're working on that, right? And so I was like, hey, man, I'm a sexy guy too, and I've had like squeezy hugs from Caroline Munro, who I interviewed in London, and like I've had squeezy hugs from Gatan Damone and Terry B. Murphy, right? So I'm like, hey, I, you know. I'm the exact opposite of this person. I'm just so enthusiastic about not being the person that I was misdiagnosed to be. And so thank you for sharing those insights, Laura. Daniel D. Snethen. So Daniel D. Snethen and I have known each other for a while now. We've collaborated on several poems, and he's had work in my Junk Merchant series. And so welcome to the show again, sir. Um, so I would love to talk about how you see issues of, say, disability, and how disability, for example, can be, because I think, Juliet Cook is maybe mildly a little bit on the spectrum. I'm not sure, but how you see disability can be an empowering thing.
Well, that's a difficult question. I don't know if I've given it a lot of thought.
Sure.
Uh, but as an educator, um, one of the goals that I have is to give every student opportunity.
Right.
I try to find where their strengths are, what they are, and then I try to encourage them because uh, most teenagers, because I deal with teenagers, I don't know about most, but I think a good percentage of them don't necessarily believe in themselves. So they need that encouragement from someone else.
Hmm.
And so I do everything I can to figure out, how they can get that. And I mean, I work with them in oral interpretation of literature and in drama. And I mean, I even have a movie that I directed, Mallard's Road, that it's on like 2B. Um, I do a lot of different things. Plus, my master's degree in zoology, so I also do original field biological research. And I have 3 students right now that I'm working with, and we're looking at heavy metal concentrations in plants that are used for medicinal, ceremonial, and foods for the Lakota people
Right.
on the Pine Reservation. So I'm all over the place.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm thinking of I had 2 students that I was doing a reader's theater from Carl Chapek's RUR, um, which is the original robot
Hmm.
story, but to play.
Right.
And um, they had a really just their diction, everything, the sound of their voice was just naturally really strange.
Right.
And so they had difficulty advancing in events and oral interpretation because they were just, it didn't fit what the judges thought it should be.
Right.
But I decided to stick them in RUR as 2 of my robots.
Right.
They didn't have to do much. They just talked like the way they did. And we ended up, advancing to the state oral interp festival.
Congratulations.
And they were, got high comments on how they portrayed the robots, and they did some amazing physical stuff too, as well, that they just came up with on their own. And as a director and stuff, I'm kind of pretty hands off. If I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to tell you. If you want a little direction, you want me to tell you what to think about doing, I'll tell you.
Right.
But I really want self-expression to come from the participant, because to take ownership of something, and it really means something to them. And I've had 2 students that have gone all the way to the nationals for poetry out loud. A couple of years ago, we had a runner-ups in the state of South Dakota. I really thought he was better than first place. I mean, I thought she was good, but I really thought he was better.
Yeah.
She ended up winning. She ended up winning the national poetry out loud, and that's $20,000.
Yes.
And I have no doubt that if my young man would have advanced, that he would have gotten $20,000. So I have, I service a population, that's kind of underprivileged. It's one of the poorest counties in the nation, and people are amazed when they see really just how talented these students are. And so, and I'm sure many of them probably have disabilities, but I don't pay attention to that kind of thing.
Right.
I look for the strengths and try to figure out what they can do. I've had, just a lot of, I have a lot of faith in the ability of the people I work with. And it's an enjoyable job, but it's a hard job.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's a lot of suicide. There's a lot of just all sorts of things. And, I've had kids that have committed suicide.
Sorry.
Students that have attempted, and
reasons.
And there's, sexual molestation. But it's not all of that. You got to understand, there's some really great people and great families, but it's just these kids that I work with come from, and I realize others do across the nation, but it's a different place out here. But this is going to be my 30th year teaching on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and I'm looking forward to some good things. And And it's nice to meet all of you. I wanted to ask Diane a question.
Absolutely.
Because I read in the past, like in the way past, and just about a year ago, I contacted Ramsey Campbell and asked him, said, "Hey, I haven't gotten to the 1970s yet. Uh, could you please recommend Ramsey Campbell where to start at? Because I want to start reading Ramsey Campbell." Well, guess who I haven't got to yet? Clive Barker.
Oh my God.
So my question is where would I start? What would your recommendation be for my first encounter with Clive Barker?
Probably the Books of Blood. That's to me at least that's the gold standard, or maybe we would call that the red standard. uh, um, and don't let any of the films throw you off, because I don't think a single film adaptation has done Clive Barker's work justice by
I
far and
think
large.
it's really hard a lot of times for a film to capture horror. Now I do think a lot of Stephen King's short stories translate, or some of his stories translate very well to film. But for other authors, a lot of times the films are just kind of, I don't know, they're campy. They don't know. I guess probably the film I think is the best one I've seen. That's just it's just like reading a book, was Rosemary's Baby.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the line for line, it's almost exact. I don't know how they did that, um, but yeah. So I don't even know if I've seen a Clive Barker movie, to be honest with you. Um, but I'll have to look at Books of Blood. I'm kind of a Bram Stoker fan, and that sort of thing. Um, but I am trying to what I call getting to the modern era, like the 1970s.
Yeah.
If I live long enough, I'll hit the 2000s.
Daniel, before I forget, we're doing I'm sure you've seen on Facebook a collective PAW, the Animal Rights Anthology, and I would love to have something from you for
I
that.
thought you had. I thought you had some stuff from me.
Oh yes, okay. I'm sorry. Because brain injury. I don't know why I
Oh,
always feel defensive when I have to explain to
oh,
people.
I think you
Uh,
do. I don't know. I get really confused because.
yeah, I'm so sorry. It's just sort of like, and this is another thing. This is a real bad drawback. I just, there's good and bad. I've talked about. I'm not, um, like there's a real dark side to disability, and one of them is like you can like get into very, very bad tailspin and meltdown about emotionally, especially with brain injury, and where sometimes I'll have I'll kind of be so defensive because it's almost like you're fighting for your life in a way. And so I'll even get into it with people I care about, like because I'll feel so, and I've had so many people like mock me, or I've literally had like murder threats, people who have attacked me. And this one guy sent me razor blades. He sent me razor blades, 100 pack of razor blades, and it was like with instructions on how to slit my wrists. It was sort of like the whole idea was I should just die, and I had, which this guy did this with the complicity of a whole bunch of people in the horror community. I'm not going to name their names. Um,
Yeah, I
you
know.
know,
Yeah,
I'm not going
I
to
don't
name their names.
understand. I don't understand why people do stuff like that. There's insensitive, horrible, um, amoral, or immoral, maybe I should say, people out there. Um, you know, I don't understand that.
There is, I do want to kind of make it a little bit positive because also a little bit of show and tell because all of our like all of our cover art and design is and layout and formatting is done by one guy. His name is Adrian Baldwin. And I want to show you a little bit example of his work because this guy he's such a beautiful man, and he is so this magazine is called Phantasmagoria magazine. I don't know if maybe you've heard of it. It was nominated most recently for the British Fantasy Award. It's been also nominated for the World Fantasy and the Rondo Hutton Classic Horror Award. And it's done by my mate Trevor Kennedy in Belfast, Ireland. And this particular issue, I'm looking for. There's an ad for Adrian because it's so cool. So they publish people like, Ramsey Campbell is one of their regular authors. Stephen Jones, Graham Masterton. Believe they've even published. Well, they've published Caitlin R. Kiernan, as we do. Clive Barker, and this is the story that I had in this issue, which was called "The Riff That Would Not Die," right? Inspired by the song "Selling My Soul" by Black Sabbath, and it was featured alongside original poetry by none other than, the man himself, the guy who like has more honors for his fiction, I believe, than any other living author, and the man is named Ramsey Campbell, right? So this is an original poem by Ramsey, which is alongside an ad for Adrian Baldwin. So Adrian is also an award-winning, he's also an award-winning novelist, and he's written scripts for the BBC. He's a very dark satire kind of guy. So I just wanted to give a shout out to, Ramsey Campbell, Adrian Baldwin, the people, Trevor Kennedy, people at Phantasmagoria magazine. If you haven't read it, really get into that. So, it's just top-notch stuff. That's all I
Hey,
wanted to say. Yeah.
Alex,
Yeah.
um, I have a quick question
Sure.
for the young ladies.
Yes.
Um, uh, Diana, you write stuff, correct? Like, do you write poetry or?
I Writing is just about all I do outside of my kids. So yeah, I write poetry, I write fiction. I'm a comic writer, comic creator, and I also write nonfiction articles for Memento Mori Inc. magazine that Alex mentioned. I'm their resident dark fashion gal, which was kind of a serendipitous melding of an old passion of mine. So I write more than I do about anything else.
And are you in Seattle or are you in one of the like suburbs or one of the
When
areas?
it suits, right? Yeah. So I'm in Everett now,
Okay.
which is relatively Seattle adjacent, but I have a lot more room to stretch my dark wings out here for a significantly better price.
Yeah, I have a daughter that lives in Seattle. So.
Oh, right on. Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
lot of doom and gloom out here. Best way to survive the winter is to write about how bleak it is.
And then Laura, I didn't catch whether you're a writer. I got you were like in the fashion designer or something. I couldn't quite. Oh,
Um,
and you're in oh, I can't remember how to say it, but
I've been
you work.
doing costuming for a very long time for the film and television industry, actually. Not so much now because there's not been nothing for about 2 years after those strikes that happened in May. But I've been really concentrating on doing the art and curation. And I have been writing. I just put together and have in the hands of editor a volume about opulent mobility from its beginning to the through the COVID shutdown, and the next volume is going up to 2024 because 2025 is shaping up to be a year already.
You do costuming for in film as well, you said?
Yes, a lot of the work that I had been doing most recently was for TV sitcoms for kids.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's
So, but silly outfits, because they need things like chicken mascots that break away and walking carpets, and that, it's comedy. And that can
Alex,
become dark comedy very quickly.
Alex, do we have time to hear like a poem or two from Diana?
Of course. I would love to.
I'd,
I would
I'd
love to.
like to hear what
Yeah.
she writes.
Yeah.
That's very kind. So I'm gonna probably have to make it brief. My profuse apologies. You might have noticed I kind of like ducked out for a few minutes earlier. Uh, I have a very amazing, very talented son who's he just turned 11 and he's on the autism spectrum. And the original plan was my older daughter, who is almost 18, crazy. She was supposed to be here to help out with him, and she had a pet emergency pop up. So I need to go make sure that the smaller little monster is okay. So I'm going to have to probably duck out permanently after this, which breaks my heart. Best laid plans of mice and men and me, right? Don't
Right.
always go the way we planned. But I have been on a huge poetry kick lately and um, really expanding stylistic forms. And the thing I love about poetry is you can do literally anything. And I'm still exploring that. I was actually afraid to delve into that when I first started writing professionally because I have um, this weird tendency to automatically try to rhyme and when I write or subtly rhyme or have like a almost a musical cadence interlaced into even in my fiction. So I used to fight it. Um, and I had a nickname for it. What did I call it? IRS, involuntary rhyming syndrome. Um, and so it's taken a really long time for me to even get into poetry that's more free form, which honestly, a lot of the time sells better to some of the bigger markets these days. Um, but it's so kind of you to ask. And um, I wrote a really, really interesting piece that I sent into Alex for the Clive Barker anthology, but obviously that would be way too early to read from. You can't blow the lid on things that fresh. So I do have. What did I grab over here? Okay, this one has a poem of mine in it that it's pretty long, so I probably wouldn't do this one. But just so the universe knows, anybody looking for weird new reads, this book comes out July 22nd, I believe, and it is called Chaotic Cupids. It's edited by Kevin J. Anderson.
Oh, wow.
Um, and it's, despite the title, it's not a romance anthology so much as it is all the directions love can go when it goes awry. And so there's some stories in here that are um, mythology based, so Cupid, Eros, that kind of stuff. And then there's sci-fi. My poem in it has a romantic angle, but it's also heavily science fiction. Um, I think it's the second or third story in here I read before we even had a paperback, and it brought me to tears. It was just this devastatingly beautiful science fiction piece. It reminded me of Interstellar, if any of you guys are a fan of that movie. But I also have this one has a shorter poem. Does this one has two of my poems in it? Actually, two poems. And I know that Alex knows some of the guys in here. This is Hotel Macabre,
Yeah.
which is the new anthology series from Crystal Lake.
Sure.
And it's cool because it's this crazy mashup compendium of forms and mediums. We've got poetry, we've got flash fiction, and there's even, it opens with a comic strip by is it Jasper Bark?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jas
yeah.
Jasper
And so that is the
Jasper
comic
has
version of Jasper Bark,
yeah,
right?
Jasper has a piece in the Clive Barker book too.
I
Yes.
saw that. Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
he is a cool cat. I thought it was so funny because he's basically our our intro to the entire book here, and there's a
We're having
comic,
him we're
little
having
comic version
on
of him, and
we're
I
having
do
him
the
on the
same
show
thing.
on the 10th. So I'm
Oh
looking
yeah,
forward. Yeah, so 2 days from now.
yeah, because you said he was going to be on, and then
3 days.
he got sick. I hope he's hanging
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Because he's a really cool guy.
Yes.
Lots of talent in there. So this has, let's see, let's do that. And Joe Meinhardt, the mastermind behind Crystal Lake, he is just the coolest. I think, yeah, this was the first poem I ever seriously wrote, actually. And because it was the first, it was originally like 1,000 words long.
Wow.
And I was like, well, there's nowhere I can send this. And I knew I was just delving into this branch of literature. And I knew I would need to iron it out and write shorter poems. Um, but Joe, I reached out to Joe because I've worked with him off and on over the years, and I just have such reverence for everything he does. And he's such a nice guy. I was like, what do I do with a poem this big? Are you still doing poetry in Hotel Macabre? And he looked at it and he was like, if we publish this segment, because there's always a point where you can end something sooner, and I see those points sometimes in I'm randomly reading something and I go, oh, you could have ended this here. You probably didn't need that extra scene. Um, and so we got it down to whatever this manageable length is. But I could zip through this really quick.
Please do.
Oh, it's like a hot day here in Seattle, so I'm like chugging water. I think that's part of why my son's having a hard time. We're not used to being warm. We'll get there, but it's an adjustment. Like we had a spike and then we had a dip, and it's like, all right, is it summer? Because we can adjust. Just oh, so this is called "Do Not Tempt Her with Apples." Ooh, that's pretty spooky. Night falls like a guillotine, that sharp singing blade, heavy with need, with want, heaven sent, hell bent, and dark as a hollow heart. Every sinking beat a dying star doomed to asphyxiate all that it loves. In shadow she lies, not a woman, not a girl, just a silhouette of the desperate shrunken shapes to come, a lunar phase caught in the corseted web, spun between dusk and dawn. She does not love anymore. Most nights she starves, wilts, waits, flesh coiled fetal and crescent, while the insatiable city eats itself alive. But not this time. For once in so many moons, the waxing state is more than equal to the sum of its parts, a Fibonacci sequence written in blood. In twilight's wake, rows of red and white soldiers multiply, divide, and conquer deep in the trenches of civil war. As the battle rages through muscle, vein, and sinew, she dreams only of the spoils. Yet when victory comes, there is no reprieve, no fanfare, only the struggle for domination, coursing electric through restless anatomy. It is not a pleasant way to wake up. Pain consumes, blinds, deafens, silver and gilded with agony, wailing in every chamber of this crumbling temple she calls home. But it is only temporary. The sting of each open sore a rite of passage on the path to growth. Through it all, she never forgets, whether by chaos or design. Change does not come cheap. It comes with violence, with knives, with fury, eviscerating the line between vice and virtue, saint and sinner, wretched and holy. And at the end of the road, this is what's left over. She is not a monster, a mistake, an aberration. Diamond skin, lizard brain, serrated Glasgow grin. These are merely accoutrements. She bears the teeth of demons, but they do not belong to her, not the way the hunger does. It is her birthright, blood-born, marrow deep, but it is older than flesh, older than bone, an appetite of ancients plucked from paradise by a greased palm and a silver tongue. One bite was all it took to bring the lust for eternal youth, crashing in abject hysteria down to earth, falling like autumn from Eve's withered limbs into the ripe budding ribs that held the hearts of her daughters. That's how the story went once upon a time, when the faithful still believed in blasphemy. But these days, the doctrine of men has no room for heroines, especially one who was born motherless. There's about 3 more stanzas after that, but it's fun to leave people in suspense. Actually, that was kind of fun because there's so many words in one's brain. You can't even, I have a hard time remembering and cataloging my own work. And when it's been this long, it's like hearing it fresh because I've written so much since. But that poem has got a little bit of foreshadowing into another upcoming work of mine that was my big monstrous baby for a really long time, because obviously there's some themes here of transformation and the myriad changes that can tear apart and rebuild a woman. And so one of my favorite monsters in the whole world that so few books or films ever touch on are succubi or succubus, right?
Yes.
The female counterpart of incubi. And sometimes they're sexual demons, sometimes they're flesh eaters, sometimes they're nightmares, that sometimes they're all of this, and there's all these iterations,
Yeah.
Lilith, the lore goes on and on and on. And I'm a huge nerd for that stuff, and I kind of forgot that I wrote this poem very much in that same wheelhouse. And in September, I believe it's September 30th, my biggest succubus is a story called Insatiable, which is a coming of age tale about a young succubus.
Nice.
So it's the family curse passed down from mother to daughter, and that is in a really incredible book called Shadow Lab Volume 2 from Blackstone Publishing.
Nice.
And there's some cool cats in there. We've got like David Moody, Adam Godfrey, Gemma Moore, and the genres just all over the place. There's fun horror, there's devastating horror, but I was so grateful that my own daughter let me sort of use her as inspiration, because when I was brainstorming what is the best new horror that nobody else has done before, because I wanted to be in this book, and I kept running into like, okay, no, this guy's doing werewolves, this guy's doing that. And I was like, well, let's go with what I really like and what I really love, which is weird stuff that hardly anybody writes about. Let's do succubi. And my editor
Right.
was like, yeah. And it just so happened that, I had this mother-daughter sort of hereditary curse angle happening, already planned. And my daughter's 17th birthday was coming up.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is perfect inspiration for, the horror that is adolescence, the horror that is a changing body. Let's make that visceral and real. And because let's face it, when you're that age, you feel like you're becoming a monster. I went through it, and it affects you in all kinds of ways. Before I had my daughter, I was anorexic for like 2 years. uh, and those bodily changes are one of the biggest real life horrors I think women face. And then it goes on into tons of other iterations as we get older. Um, real horror stories, I have many. Fictional horror stories, I have many. And then sometimes those worlds um, collide in amazing ways. So I am going to thank you guys so much for having me and
Breathing
apologize again
hacks.
for ducking out early. I would like to maybe slowly slip into the shadows and hear who wants to speak next, but you probably won't hear more from me because I got to make sure that little monster is not
Okay.
totally,
Um,
totally missing.
we always do a squeezy hug, so I want to give you a nice
Easy
warm
hugs.
hug.
And
That is what we're all about.
before you leave, I thought the poem was excellent, but more than that, you have a really nice reading voice,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I could listen to you read, I think, for hours. So a lot of
Oh,
times it's not the case. So yeah,
that
I
was
enjoyed that.
so kind.
And on top of that, I just wanted to add before you go, I need to get you on board Omaha Kali to the Goddess. That's one of our forthcoming books, and we have again, the usual suspects, Poppy Bright and all the gangs. So it really, it's an incredible, anthology, and of course, Laura, I'd love to have your work in whatever shape. I know you're a goddess person as well, and Daniel as well. You're all welcome to contribute.
Oh,
So
that sounds incredible. Yeah,
yeah,
please send me more. Send me everything about this.
yes, yeah.
I could I when I get deep into mythology, I can live there. So be
Right.
careful.
Right. Yeah. And just, I mean, I know you have just a few seconds left. I just wanted to kind of, you know, dovetail and piggyback off what you were saying about, changes in a woman's, reproductive cycle, and then, eventually you hit, menopause. And one of the things, one of my multiple contributors now, Lasara Firefox Allen, is well known as an a neurodivergent, is neurodivergent, also non-binary, transgender person, and as well as and written extensively about the whole issue of gender queer menopause, especially so, which is completely
Oh wow.
invisible,
Yeah.
population group, right? And so I blurbed their book, uh, Genderqueer Menopause. I just wanted to add. Plus, Lasara wrote about Madonna because I'm a huge. Who doesn't like Madonna? I mean, I would have to seriously question your basic taste, But Lasara wrote me a piece about Madonna for the Goddess book. So I'm
Oh,
really like super stoked about it. Originally, it was going to be a couple of different anthologies. I was going to do just a Madonna book, I was going to do a Britney Spears book. I was going to do, yeah, I'm a Britney fan. Okay, what can I tell you, man? It's Britney, bitch, basically. But
that was my childhood.
you know,
Well,
you know what I
Hit Me
mean?
Baby was the big one, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So such
What
a
first
powerful
CD I
person.
ever
Such a
bought, I think.
powerful, incredible woman. So got to give her props, and Bjork as well. So yeah, so hit me with your best shot, fire away, I would love to have something from you, anything about goddess. Yeah. And it's not just that w women are goddess. It's like goddess is reality as far as I'm concerned. Goddess is reality. We live w- one in one reality, which is, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of people, you know, and in my spiritual tradition, which is Vedanta, believe that it's all one thing, like your energy, your vibration, your habits, what you put into the world and what you receive from the world, it's all one thing, and it's goddess, you know. So I don't think that and I think that what we call evil is going against nature. That's simply, going against the flow of nature, you know. You try to repress people, you try to hurt people, you're going against, you know, the everything, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's a very relatable line of reasoning. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, and it goes to what I think is very, very exciting. And I also wanted to mention, like Daniel is a scientist, and so is one of our contributors that I love a lot. Caitlin R. Kiernan, and
Oh,
and
she's fantastic.
right, and she is such a beautiful human being. I mean, I've known her for like 30 years. Just, 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 I have such a heart feeling for Caitlin. And she is has very well known vertebrate paleontologist. So she's like, she, she cares about what I mean, is very, very famous for talking about deep time, how in geological terms, like which is relates to the whole H.P. Lovecraft sort of cosmic, horror thing, But I think also there's also an aspect which they share with Clive Barker, which is, it's not just fear or cosmic dread or like, Ramsey is very famous for, the sort of the cosmic horror Lovecraftian thing. It's also the cosmic awe, which also includes things like angels, which includes great good, right? And so which can be terrifying. I mean, like Rilke's poem, you know,
I love Ruby.
which he says, right, every um, Angel is like fröhlich or something like that. Jeder Angel is fröhlich, I believe. It's every angel is terrifying, right? And if you read the Old Testament, the descriptions of angels, fuck, man, they're like these bird eye creatures, right? They're
There's,
hallucinatory.
you're gonna like the poem I wrote for the Barker anthology. That's all I'm gonna say. There might be
Okay.
some imagery like that. Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe,
maybe. Yeah,
maybe
wow.
some very scary wings made out of very scary things.
Yeah, and
I,
that
I
rhymes.
need to run.
Okay.
I was so honored to be here. You guys party on without me.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and stay dark in the light. I'm so
Yeah.
glad we connected, and I will speak to you soon, my friend. And it was so great to meet you too, and really, what a amazing, diverse roundtable we've had here today. So
Yeah.
I will catch up on what I missed, obviously. Um, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Diana.
Bye.
Here, bye-bye. Okay, so let's see. I think it's probably, time to kind of wrap things up a little bit. I just wanted to maybe if either you both wanted to read something or share something, um, I would love to hear that.
Well, I have something, but I don't know if Laura has something she can go first if she would like to.
And also, I'd like to show our viewers one of your books that you sent me very kindly, Pediophobia, which I'm a huge fan of yours. This is from Blood Pudding Press, right? Our mutual friend and collaborator, Juliet Cook, and it's very tactile. I think that Laura would probably appreciate, the tactility of what, uh, uh, what Juliet puts into these productions, which do not make any money, so it's operating at a loss, but they're so tactile and furry and feathery and you know, these little glitter things.
That's fabulous.
It is.
I'm actually trying to pull up my introduction, so if you want to go on first, please do.
Well, okay. You said one poem, so I had four pulled out, but I'm going to go with this poem. It is unpublished. You have to realize I walk in a lot of different planes, and I just go from one paradigm to another. And also, you know, growing up, one of my favorite TV shows was the Beverly Hillbillies. And I grew up in rural South Dakota. I kind of fashioned myself as a hillbilly. So this poem, I do think it's got some. I think it's worth hearing, but I may sound a little hillbillyish while I'm reading it. But I'm a man of many, many things, I guess. So this is called My Friend. I'm going to make sure I can see it here. Let me just put a little more light on the subject here, because I don't have it memorized. But okay, let me tell you about my friend. He's intelligent, exceptionally so. In some regards, he's my reflection, my hillbilly doppelganger from 35 years ago. I'm a hillbilly too. Learn much of my personal philosophy from J.D. Clampett himself. I grew up in the southern sandhills of Tripp County, South Dakota, with needle and thread grass, hog-nosed snakes, and sandburrs. Getting back to my friend, he's a rambunctious sort, exasperatingly honest to a fault, has a smile that could melt butter off an icicle. He's a good old Southern boy. He's been in them Pentecostal churches where they speaks in tongues, drinks kerosene, and handles them copper-headed snakes. I'd like to visit one of them churches. Sure as shooting I would. I wants to handle one of them venomous vituperous vipers and sing hallelujah for dying trying. My friend, he plays piano better than the church pianist, but you won't find him in church no more, because he got indoctrinated the way white folks in them parts is always indoctrinating the unbeliever by scaring or berating or beating, or worse yet, ignoring the hell out of an unrepentant sinner. A dad who didn't really give a damn, and a mother who destroyed all that should be good and righteous between a woman and her son. At least grandma cared. She loved him, probably saved him from dying. And why should he have any feelings of loving or belonging to the hate mongers who seemingly had forgotten that love is the greatest of all commandments? The message of hate never saved nobody. Judge not, lest ye be judged. And that day of judgment is it coming, and the fires of hell are going to be fueled by the self-righteous bodies of sanctimonious Christians.
Yeah,
Nice.
nice. It kind of gave me the fear a little bit. It reminded me of James Baldwin, you know, go tell it on the mountain, right? That was
So you liked it? Is it okay?
Perfect for
Does it
this
drive,
time.
perfect. Yeah, it was
does
perfect.
it drive a point home?
Yep, you sure did.
Okay, that's good.
Excellent.
Did you tell I'm an oral interpretation coach?
You've done it well.
Yeah. You look like somebody who's an oral interpretation coach. You have that whole, aura about you. Maybe it's the beard. I don't know, man. You feel familiar. You feel like home, like I would. I don't know. I like you a lot. So I'm very emotional. So anyway, yeah, you feel like home.
Well, I'm glad you appreciated. Thanks for listening. I
Of
do
course.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Also a beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you.
He has
Very evocative.
a singing voice too. Like I've heard him do a cappella. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah.
It's funny how singing is like that. And it can actually open you up to a lot of other things, I think, when you're able to sing. I don't know. I have the introduction for the book that I'm writing. It's very short, and I've told one of the stories already, so I won't include it a second time. But this is a story of an exhibit that reimagines disability as opulent and powerful, and tells how it grew from a tiny art show that almost disappeared to an annual international exhibition featuring artists from across the United States and around the world. It's a tale told through disability art and artists about how disability is viewed in our culture and what it might become instead. It is about community. It is also the story of coming to terms with my own chronic health issues. My vision for these exhibits is a world where disability is celebrated instead of being denied, ignored, and feared. So I told you the story how this began. But after that point, with the help of a friend, I turned his old wheelchair into an Edwardian throne, and the vision for this was born. After making my next piece, Le Flâneur, which was a walker with attached parasol, silver platter, gramophone, and cow horns, I
Yeah.
struggled to find places to show my work. So many of the places, the galleries I found were not wheelchair accessible. After discovering how challenging it was to make the sculptures safe and functional, I researched walker and wheelchair designs, and there are quite a few patents online for imaginative devices, but almost none of those are available on the market. It was really clear that this was larger than I thought. I decided to curate group exhibits dealing with a subject maybe I could find kindred spirits, fellow artists, and people who could help me maneuver medical licensing and maybe make these devices a reality. At the very least, it would get people talking about the subject. Now, along the way, I found that maybe equipment design was not my forte, but I was truly passionate about curation and accessibility. The exhibits took on a life of their own, and eventually I discovered that I was not merely an ally, but part of disability culture myself. Sharing the exhibits and ideas is the best ways that I know to get these conversations started. After all, we have to be able to imagine the possibilities before we know we want them. Like Bell Hooks says, the function of art is not to do more than tell it like it is, it's to imagine what is possible.
Oh my God, you just invoked bell hooks. Okay, so I got mad. I got some mad love for some bell hooks, man. I got some mad love. You know what I'm saying?
Well deserved.
Just, just oh my God. As an educator, and as an educator, like, reading Bell's stuff, over and over again, and I used her extensively alongside people like, Judith Butler in my master's thesis on Gloria Anzaldúa, right? Gloria Anzaldúa, Gloria, and bell hooks. I would talk about empowerment. Talk about love, right? The practice of love. I mean, truly embodying what, Martin, was all about. Like, this is a love movement, right? Like, and also, I mean, using the word erotic in the context of teaching, which is very unusual, but teaching, transgressive teaching, which really I think transgression means going against, what is normal, common apathy, right? Apathy is common, right? lack of care is narcissism is surprisingly much more common than I ever dreamed possible. Being the target of narcissists is we even had, believe it or not, we had some people target this show who were eugenicists, who were part of this movement that you ever heard of greenwashing, right? So these people, and I'm going to name names because they've added themselves. One of them is an award-winning filmmaker named Vanessa H. Smith. She's made documentaries, including documentaries about the Dalai Lama and Bill Plimpton, who illustrated my book, Fucked Up Fairy Tales. In fact, Bill and I collaborated on this project. So Vanessa has worked with the Dalai Lama, and she's an award-winning filmmaker. She and this woman named Alexis Kraslovsky, who is an emeritus professor at Cal State Northridge, worked together. Um, Vanessa H. Smith is married to a guy named Donald Whedon. Donald Whedon as in the Whedon Foundation, as in a funder of white supremacy. And they targeted via my friend Ellen Mabey. Okay, so they got in touch with Ellen Mabey, who is a very well-known Jewish poet, and they tried to like coerce her or kind of manipulate her into coming out of her reclusion and going out and publicly speaking at an event that they were going to host at Beyond Baroque in this past March 21st. Now, I did a little deep dive. They were targeting me and her, and they were trying to get me to manipulate her into coming out of, retirement. So I did a little research, and I found out, to my horror, see, they were telling me that I was going to be a star in a documentary film called Burning Hearts, and they were going to get people like Madonna and everybody else to be in this movie. It was complete bullshit. They were white supremacists, and they were trying to use us to be the cover for their eugenicist program. And so let's see what happened. So I looked at they had Vanessa Smith and Alexis Kraslovsky had two events. One at they work with a guy named Clive Davis, who's very famous record mogul, right? Clive Davis they live in Bedford, New York. Clive Davis lives here. Donald Trump lives here, right? Within 10 miles of the Whedon Foundation, which is very close to the Clive Davis Arts Center, which is where they had this reading from a book called Watermelon Linguistics, which they got Ellen Mabey to blurb in order to cover up for their literally being white supremacists. So it's horrifying that they were even on our show, together. And so I looked at the dates that they had a reading together last year. That was the day, that was very famous day, where March 12th, 1938 was when 1938 was when Hitler annexed Poland. And then March 21st was when it's called 1933 was called so-called Potsdam's Day, which was after Chancellor Adolf Hitler assumed power after the Reichstag fire incident. So these are sort of high holidays for white supremacists. And and then they claimed that they were doing this documentary about me. They were saying they groomed me. They said, "Oh, you're brilliant," yada yada yada. We'll come out. We'll film you. You'll fly out to LA. We'll have this event. They even created like banners, which are still up on like Alexis Kraslovsky's website, that said that had all these people that were, featured poets at Beyond Baroque. They don't even know Beyond Baroque. Like I go way, way back with, I know all of the people in Beyond Baroque, and I've published with them and read alongside them and had them on the show. And so, yeah, I mean, these people are scary, right? They're totally tied in with white supremacy, and they're totally tied in with anti-immigration shit and with Donald Trump. And they fund Donald Trump. So it was like leading up to the fascist takeover of the United States of America by Donald Trump. These people targeted me and Ellen Mabey specifically. They even got Ellen Mabey to blurb to Alexis's, and there were, oh, she's an award-winning poet, novelist, filmmaker, and a professor at Cal State Northridge, and nobody knows about this. I've had been extremely unsuccessful in getting anybody to take on the story. So I published a series of exposés on the Small Bear Review. So I'm hoping that people and talked about it publicly. I'm hoping that people now become aware that these people who have worked with the Dalai Lama, who've worked with Free Tibet, who've worked with Martin Scorsese, that they're white supremacists, and they're using these very, very distinguished people who are known for peace to wage war. I just wanted to say that, on the air. It's terrifying.
It genuinely is.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing it.
thank you. And I wanted to read and maybe close out things with one of my favorite. It's a flash fiction. It's not very long, but it's called Cities and Dust, and it's inspired by the song by Susie and the Banshees. I'm kind of a big fan of theirs, and this has been just republished in LA Poets Place. And I'm just going to read it because it's one of my favorite pieces that I ever wrote. Okay, it's called Cities and Dust. Um, she couldn't remember the first time she heard the song, only that it was part of her big sister's collection of vinyl, which was mostly first pressings. Cindy set the record on the ancient turntable, which was one of the kind you could carry and either connect outside speakers to or listen through the one built in. Either way, it was true. The music sounded richer, warmer, and more true. And ever since she discovered Lisa's trove in the attic, there was no way in the world she was going to subject her ears to CDs, let alone the super compressed abominations that were MP3s. But everybody had to discover these things for themselves, the same way she did, stumbling over piles of ancient magazines that slithered like live things when you disturbed them. She thought of this secretly as tomb life, inventing the term and making a note in a private journal, which she kept for random jottings of this kind. Once she'd listened to the song, Cindy's ears were never the same. She knew vaguely about the period it came from, which was around the time she had been born, and it struck her ears then as definitively a creature of tomb life, and what the ancient Egyptians doubtless had their own versions of. It was a point of faith with her that no matter how outlandish her speculations, she believed in some manner, in some way, they had to be true, because there were other dimensions, pockets of other worlds folded into this one, and no reason why something from that place couldn't poke its head into ours and sniff around. The rhythm and percussion sounded like bright chimes, like glass baubles, if they could sing, and made her think, not for the first time, about glass beads shaped like bees, or bees formed of glass beads, because the words sounded alike, and it would be exceedingly poetic if they shared something at bottom that yoked them with more intensity. And B, because one night, previous to going to sleep, she had this terrific idea, which reawakened as she listened and moved to the old song in the attic of the Brown house her older sister had inherited, and she visited from time to time. People, especially guys, would take a cue from Cindy's big, innocent eyes and elven features and mistake her for some woodland creature, pulling them in, making their hearts soft and their brains gooey, although she insisted they speak to her properly and either respect her or leave her alone. She'd seen too many of her peers saddled with some dude they thought little of but kept other guys away, but given that tactic wasn't 100% effective. Cindy thought people were okay, but she preferred her own company and that of the music and the silence. She was more than capable of filling with landscapes that danced with color and song. Lisa was working at a law firm downtown, many late hours, and Cindy was a junior at the state university. This was her spring break. She was deciding on a job or an internship or going her own way with a startup or perhaps making clothes, which she was fabulous at. Any way you looked at it, the future felt either glorious or perilous, and she vacillated between the urge to rush out into the street and dance with random strangers or curl herself into a ball and never rise again until the world had sorted itself properly and people like her had a place in it, something permanent and dignified. She'd shed her black leather jacket ages ago and it lay on top of a pile of the slithery tomb things. Cindy's hair was blue, but maybe tomorrow would lie in fuzzy clumps on the bathroom tile. Her t-shirt was white and a size too large. The jeans were trashed down the front with the white threads like spider webs swarming the smooth, immaculate pink of her thighs. She moved with the song snaked within her. It was about something or someone falling apart, their world crashing down. It could be a private apocalypse or speak to the general condition. The fifth dimension was palpable now in the attic, perceivable as the milky late afternoon sun through the dormer windows, picking out some, but not other, trophies of Lisa's life in the big city in sharp relief. There were the tragic remnants of her marriage. That asshole. She was too young at the time for her opinion to register with anyone other than her sister. But Lisa told her later she'd nearly broken up with Ken on the spot when she saw Cindy's reaction. And Lisa's ironic take on Mrs. Havisham's wedding cake, a creation of plaster of Paris and newspapers and Halloween spiders from the brief period she'd slummed in the art world. Cindy knew Lisa was just as talented as she was and more and could do more in areas she couldn't, but she respected her sister's decision to move the art world period up to the attic among the other artifacts. Cindy realized she was spacing out a little bit and caught herself just in time. Unconsciously, she had begun the song again, which meant she'd picked up the needle and dropped it at the same groove. Also, right at the edge of perception was the idea generating behind the music that the things we notice, of all the bright and dazzling ephemera, are the things they wish us to. And obviously, they belong to the hyper dimension, which was the fifth. And this really belonged to her journal as well. But right now, Susie was breaking down something else for her because it was true. All the cities would crumble down into dust, and what remained sifted itself from the ruins that stood like sculptures of colored chalk, all their features stylized and made equal. The beads, the bees that were beads, spread the pollen of event nodes. That is to say, they carried possibility like glitter on their thundering black fuzz. And even when all the cities had collapsed, when the tomb life inhabited a real tomb of some kind or another, and history had either exonerated Cindy or obliterated her, at some level it wouldn't matter in the slightest because the bees were out there dropping potential like mad. Glass beads had voices and they sounded like Susie. And when Lisa came home, Cindy would have something yummy prepared for her because that's what sisters did for each other. So that's Cities and Dust, that's based on the song by Susie and the Banshees. So my that's my piece. So um, okay, so uh, let's see. Laura, you've actually frozen. You've frozen. Um, oh,
I'm not sure what happened.
oh, we're still on. So that was a complete other. I guess this is part two. Well, damn, this this is weird. I've never had that happen. So it literally stopped recording, it cut out, and that thing is now being uploaded. Um, so I don't know. It's kind of seems like it's a little bit appropriate to the story, right? Because it's about the fifth dimension poking into this one. So I guess and it automatically started recording. Did you see that paranormal shit that just happened? I didn't start recording. It started recording on itself on its own. Did you see that?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, no, it really did. It
We
literally,
experienced it. I don't know if I saw it. I
well,
experienced
I mean,
it.
you didn't see it, but you actually experienced. So it it that's paranormal, right? Like it started recording on its own.
Well, it ended on its own too.
It ended on its own too. Well, so wow, this is
And you disappeared, and then when you came back, all our positions shifted.
yeah. So wow,
I
and then
don't know. You popped in and out like a Cheshire cat.
so yeah, so this is very appropriate and probably going to inspire some more stories from me. And I hope maybe you too, and poems. Maybe we could write another, some more collaborations. And you know, so I wanted to like share. I didn't want to read or anything. I just wanted to show you guys one of my favorite books that I wrote. It's called The Doom Hippies, and this came out about 2015 or so. And this has actually got into the Widner Library at Harvard University. So I'm actually literally collected at Harvard University. I have two books there. And that was kind of because I'm friends with Jeffrey Thomas, the weird fiction guy, and his brother is Craig Thomas, who's the chief cataloger at the Widner Library at Harvard, right? And so I had shared a post that was about a short film that had been made about Jeffrey's work, right? And I got this message from Craig Thomas, right, saying, "Thank you for sharing Jeff's thing." And they're very modest and humble people. It's like it's very unusual for people to be that nice, right? It's like, oh, yeah, you're welcome. Sorry, and about their brother, right? A lot of people are very selfish, and I was like very surprised. I was like, Craig, well, that's awesome that you guys look after each other, right? I said, what do you do? Are you an author too? And he said, no, I'm a librarian. And I was like, oh God, what kind of library do you work at? Oh, Harvard. Not just any Harvard library, but the main library at Harvard, right? And it was like, I was like, hey, that's cool. That's great. And he started to ask me some questions. And pretty soon, like he was asking me, could I send, could I donate, some of my books to them, right? So I was like, wow, holy Toledo. You want me to, send you my books to Harvard, right? So I was really shocked and it just blew my mind. So that's pretty cool. I think,
It is.
I don't know anybody else who has their and this is bizarro fiction, right? It's not like well, there's some Baudelaire translations, but it's and stuff that's inspired by, Borges and whatever, but I just really blew my mind. So I think with Nocturnicorn books, like we're institutionalized sounds bad, but we're in institutions, right? We're in institutions that where the next Barack Obama or the next Amanda Gorman could be reading our stuff, you know. And so it's amazing. It's a really amazing. So I would love to have so like I just want to sort of have to have the squeezins and kind of talk a little bit about um, going forward, like what I would love to have from both of you. So they have a collective paw, which is it's not just an animal rights anthology. It's more of like a and that reminds me, I was going to ask you, Laura, have you done any work with, say, like animal mobility?
A little bit. I'd done some designs,
Yeah.
but nothing that has gone um, anywhere personally major. I sometimes will do commissions for people.
Well, I mean, the fact that you have animal mobility stuff at all
Hmm.
is awesome. And I was wondering if maybe you could it's a charity for animal rights organizations. It was created by our friend Nicole H. Six, who is a dark fiction author, poet, and filmmaker and actress, and also the daughter of Nikki Six from Motley Crue, right? You know, and so she's a beautiful, beautiful woman, right? And I'm really honored to be working with her. And so yeah, there's this. So Ellen maybe wrote this. I think I talked a little bit about this before. That she wrote a poem uh, called a Whiff of Wonder, which contained the line "a collective paw," and it said to the phrase, "There's something in the collective paw that." And we did our previous anthology, which I wish I'd known you. You would have loved this. Our previous anthology, which was the precursor to to a collective paw, is called Neurospicy, a defiantly different anthology. And this is second edition Neurospicier remix, right? We have contributions from Ellen Mabey. We have Cassandra Alagos Scuffi, who's translated my poetry into Greek, and Neurodivergent Rebel, Lyric Rivera, very well known for the Neurodivergent Rebel, Substack and their, best-selling author and kind of disability rights and autism rights, activist, and who we've also had on the show. Emily Frank, who's an amazing poet and publisher and editor. She's published Ellen Mabey, and she calls me um, Ellen Mabey's male opposite. Um, Rose J. Monin, who's a Smith graduate and in comparative literature, like myself. Tara Vanflower, who is the ethereal voice of a band called um, Lycia, which also collaborated with Typo Negative. And, Trent Reznor is a huge fan of hers. She always says, when I say that, she's like, yeah, I'm no, like, she doesn't really care. She doesn't, it doesn't mean anything to her. But, the late Pete Steele brought her on tour with Typo Negative, right? And then, um, and then Sandy DeLuca is our collaborator she's a two-time Bram Stoker nominee, and her work is collected at Brown University. And Caitlin R. Kiernan, two-time Bram Stoker Award winning author and World Fantasy Award winning author and vertebrate paleontologist, right? Ron Whitehead is and Carrie Lee Crum from the Runaways, founded the Runaways, Sarah Falk Allen, Carmela Boyes, and we have a piece from Herman Melville too that I stuck in there. The Bartleby the Scrivener, because I thought I've always loved that story because I think it really speaks to a lot of you know our our kind of outlaw sensibility. We really are pushing back against conformity and this whole idea that you have to be, for example, if you're disabled, then you have to be kind of
How
depressed.
how were you able to get Bartleby the Scrivener? Was it in the public domain or
Oh,
what?
it's a public domain, yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
I've read that. Yeah.
yeah. It's a classic. We have like Joe Kidd, who's like the National Beat Poet Laureate, or it's actually Beat Poet Laureate of Michigan. and like Jackie Dilworth, who's translated Baudelaire and Nostradamus, and then Ron Whitehead is a two-time Nobel Prize for Literature nominee, and also was, among his fans are like Hunter S. Thompson, right? So that's incredible. And also like and we have Don Kingfisher Campbell, right? Who we're going to have on the show again, and Dusty Jaggers, Michael H. Hansen, Lyric Rivera, Tajala Qureshi is an amazing editor and author and poet in Pakistan. So it's really an incredible piece of work, if I say so myself. So I don't know why I'm showing you. I mean, I just for the viewers, Neurospicy is absolutely is why I'm very, very proud of it. So a collective paw is just it just kind my partner Elias Celeste Williams, aka Pickles, and I were watching an Ellen Maybe video, and she was just, reciting Whiff of Wonder, and we both looked at each other and said, "There's something in the collective paw. There is something in the collective paw, right?" And then I created a logo that was designed by Adrian Baldwin, and began to stick it on all my books, and I made it my profile picture on Facebook. And there's something anchoring about that. It was sort of like the collective paw is holding us all up. And then Nicole H6 messaged me and she said, "Hey, Alex, can I submit to a collective paw?" And I was like, "Well, it's not a anthology, or is it?" And I said, "If it was an anthology, what would you like it to be?" And she said, "An animal rights anthology." I said, "That makes sense." And I said, "For what cause?" She said, "Stray cats." Right? So stray cats. So I said, well, we can make it a little more general. We can make it for animal rights organizations, and people can choose to, and we can contribute the money that we for royalties to animal rights organizations. And this became kind of like it. It is such a popular idea that we got, a whole lot of authors to contribute. And, Billy Martin, Poppy Z. Bright, contributed. The Devil You Know from that's a title story from his collection, The Devil You Know, right? And Caitlin R. Kiernan and Hazeline Lynch, who does Senior Fluffy, right? Who was also in the Bauhaus book. So I'm really excited about A Collective Paw because it's for me, it's an ethos. It's like, it's embracing everybody, like, whether you're disabled, whether you're queer, neurodivergent, you're a brilliant scientist like Daniel here, you're an incredible costume designer and designer of mobility, devices and sculptures, right? And wearable art like Laura here, or just an average person. I worked with uh, at Cal State at Los Angeles Harbor College it's a very disadvantaged population in LA. And one of my students, I'm in developmental communications, which is sort of remedial, what they used to call it remedial, right? And one of my students was actually an award, like won a jury prize award at the Cannes Film Festival. And he's disabled. And I said, "You're disabled? Wow. That's actually terrifying, right? Like what excuse do I have, I mean, so yeah, and he showed us his films. They were so good. Like he was exceptionally talented. And I was like, wow. So that's disability, that's pretty amazing, right? So and getting to work with Tom Sullivan as well changed my life. I mean, I'd never met anybody who literally had encounters with Helen Keller. Encountered Martin Luther King. He, Muhammad Ali, and he was a journalist with Good Morning America, right? And he, interviewed people like Bo Derek, and Tom's thing is always like, I'm a blind guy, so I can't see you. So I've never met an ugly person because I'm literally blind, right? And he and Betty White had shared a companion animal called Dinah. They wrote a book called The Leading Lady, Diana's Story, which is, which is a another, runaway bestseller. So, I got to work with both of them, and they really taught me a lot about like the interrelationship between the interdependency. It's not like a dependent personality disorder. I was labeled with that, but it's sort of like, okay, so animals and people, we have these incredible bonds, they're our friends, they're people, you know. And I don't think it's sentimental for people to like have relationships. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, right? Relationships with animals, because we are animals and they animals are our friends, and they they help us in so many ways. So that's what a collective paw is all about. It's about, I think, Laura, I think you, I'm kind of a little surprised that we haven't encountered one another before, because like, so we met through Linda Kay, right?
Yeah, just do
Yeah,
that. But sometimes that's just how it happens.
yeah. It's
Um,
it's
if
amazing.
you're, yeah,
Hey, Alex,
Yeah.
do you mind if I read one more poem?
Oh, please, please, sir, you're very welcome. Yeah, yeah.
and I'm going to have to take off pretty soon, but I would love to hear your last poem.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm thinking you might like it for a collective paw.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Terrific.
it's been published before, but
Yeah.
it's called Bush Meat.
Wow.
Muddy lumber roads meander through the Cameroon rainforest. Beneath the cloak of fog and night, poachers travel twisted trails. Listen to the gorilla when it cries. Hear the grinding of gears, the whining of engines. See the blinding halogen beams as jeeps wind deeper into the night. Listen to the gorilla when it cries. Trespass on the land of the Baka, pygmy inhabitants since near Neolithic time. Trespass on the land of the gorilla, anthropoidal inhabitants since prehistoric time. Listen to the gorilla when it cries. Frightened and blinded by halogen lights, listen to the gorillas when they cry. Listen to the curses of the mighty poachers. Listen to the roar of their mighty rifles. Listen to the gorilla when it cries. Listen to the buyers when they buy. Listen to the logging companies when they lie. Listen to the Yaoundé diners when they dine. Listen to the Baja pygmies when they cry. Listen to the gorillas when they die.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful. Very moving.
Absolutely. And it
You
sounds
want
like a
me to,
good fit.
you want me to submit that for collective thought?
Yeah, yeah. I would probably put it, front, in front of, yeah. I think I might make it the anchor of, the anchor of the book. Yeah, that's beautiful.
That truly is.
Yeah, so amazing.
What
Wow.
I would have to offer would be some designs for wheelchair costumes for a dog.
Yes, definitely send me those.
All
I
right.
absolutely put those in. Wow.
Zeppy the rocket dog.
So honored, so honored. I'm so happy right now. I'm so happy.
I'm so
Like,
glad we could do this. This is
yeah,
terrific.
this is really nice. It's like everything kind of, it's almost like something else, some other higher power is bringing us together. I know that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but you know,
Sometimes being open into the universe works.
right? Yeah. So, okay. Uh, I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and we have a tradition here. It's called the squeezins, and it's very simple. It's just a squeezy hug. It's just okay.
I'm gonna give you a bear squeeze.
A bear squeezing. So much love, and we'll see you both very soon. Okay,
Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you. So nice to meet you.
take care. Bye bye.
Goodbye.